Driving with John is coming through! Hey everybody, welcome back to Driving with John. Today I'm actually waiting in line to get fuel. So I'm gonna make I wouldn't say a short video, but not as long a video. I've been hearing a lot about a driver shortage for driving truck. And, I've been thinking a lot about that. So I started doing some research. And it's kind of crazy what I found. It's a myth. There is no driver shortage. You hear it all over the news. You hear it in every news report that truck drivers, there's a huge shortage of truck drivers because all these guys retired. That's not the truth. The truth is the truck driving industry, the old school guys, the guys who have been driving for years, they can make more money by going home and driving local or getting a construction job or doing something else than they can driving a truck. So they choose not to. The shortage is forced. They did that on purpose. It sounds crazy, but they're trying to bring a bunch of younger, generation in to the trucking industry at a much lower pay than what the old guys used to make the industry standard pay lower. It's crazy. If you get like a smaller company, they still pay really well. But these big companies, that are out there, there's so many of them, Prime, Swift, there's a lot of them. They bring guys in at like 30 cents a mile, 31 cents a mile, which is an insult. It really is. And that we are living in this time where somebody can basically, sorry, I want to see if there's another fuel island open because this one's taking forever. But basically they're forcing, I don't know, what's up with my mouth today? I can't talk. They're forcing a shortage of drivers. And it's not that there actually is a shortage. There's, thousands of people going into driving every week now. And they're just forced through this funnel into the large carriers where they're abused and mistreated and underpaid until they quit and get out of the industry. That's what the truth of the matter is. I don't remember the name of the agency, but there's an agency out there, and if you know, you can comment below and educate the other drivers. But there's an agency out there that's putting it out there that there's this huge driver shortage and they need drivers so bad and all this kind of thing. No, the reality is they're not willing to pay what the old guys are willing to drive for, and I can't say I blame them. Before all the regulations from the government came in, these guys were making crazy money. And now they want them to live off of, 30, 40, 50,000 a year? No. That doesn't even make sense. Why would anybody drive a truck, sacrifice their life, basically, and their family life? I'll use me as an example, okay? I'm out on the road, 11 to 14 days at a time, okay? I'm sacrificing my family time to try to make a good living. And on top of that, I'm sacrificing my life because on the road is dangerous. It's extremely dangerous out here. People drive crazy. And in that process, I'm getting compensated. By the way, I'm only getting compensated if the truck's moving. When I'm getting unloaded or loaded or doing my pre-trips or anything else, or getting fuel, which is what I'm about ready to do, I don't get paid for that. Everywhere else you work in the world, don't worry, it's not the corona. Everywhere else you work in the world, you get compensated for working. But in the trucking industry, somehow they're exempt because, you only get paid when you're moving. Well, I'm working when I'm getting fuel. I'm working when I'm doing my pre-trip, my post-trip. I'm working when I'm at the shipper and the receiver. But I don't get paid for those things. I only get paid when the truck is moving. So not only are they paying drivers less, but they're making them work for free half the time. I think the problem isn't the driver shortage. The problem is the industry itself needs to go through a change. And after doing a bunch of research and looking into it and trying to figure out, because I'm one of those people, when I see a problem, I try to solve it in my head. I think, honestly, they need to go to hourly pay for all on-duty time, for all work hours, for all work time. that's in the computer. Because everything is by computer now. It can't be cheated. Like, if you're paid by the miles, you can be cheated miles. I've been cheated miles, so I know you can be. But if you're paid by the hour and it's logged in your system, you can easily track that. I mean, I track all my miles and I make sure I'm paid right, but if you're paid by the hour, it's a lot easier to track. I mean, I can look down and say, okay, I worked 10 hours. I'm making, $24 an hour. I should have this amount of money in my paycheck. That's the way it should be. And that's the way it will go eventually, because the trucking industry is a needed industry, and eventually somebody's going to step in and make it work. And if you're wondering, why the trucking companies can afford to pay someone such a small amount compared to what they used to pay them, I'll explain it to you. This is what I found. So instead of paying the drivers, they now have lowered the standards because of the e-logs and all that stuff. Everything's so restricted. You can only drive certain hours and only a certain amount of time and a certain amount of miles and all these things. They've made it so you can only make this amount of money. But the carriers that are out there, because they know you can only make this amount of money, they can undercut other carriers on shipping costs, which make them pick up big contracts. And it's a vicious cycle. The more they undercut, the more they pay the drivers less. Well, what's going to end up happening is there's going to be trucking companies that go out of business, like Celion just recently did. And what that's going to do is eventually it's going to make these carriers realize that they're going to have to charge more for their shipping costs and pay their drivers more. Because the drivers are the backbone of this industry. Without the drivers, nothing gets delivered. Basically, what I found from my research is that the industry is basically scamming everybody else in the world. They're telling them, we need as many drivers as possible because we have a huge shortage, and they're bringing all these drivers in, promising them, this great career of truck driving, and then they underpay them and they abuse them, and most of them quit. Like probably 98%. I don't have that statistic for sure, but a large percentage of these huge carriers, they bring in thousands of people at a time, and they get them out on the road with little to no training, kind of like what happened to me. And they just push them in the door, they go out. They push more in, they go out. They push more in, go out. Because they're undercutting freight prices so bad, they can't afford to pay more. Meanwhile, if you do a little research, you'll find out, like, the CEOs of these companies, not that I'm one of those people that think CEOs shouldn't get paid well. They should. But in this process, the person that's losing out is the driver. The most important part of truck driving is the driver. Meanwhile, the CEOs' wages have not went down. They've actually went up. If you do your research, you'll see what I mean. But there are major carriers out there, their CEOs make between $3 million and $9 million a year. Again, I'm not against CEOs making big money because, they have to deal with a lot. But when the CEO is way overpaid and the person that basically makes your business possible is way underpaid, it's not sustainable. It's not going to continue this way. We already saw Celion go down, like I said earlier. You're going to see a bunch of carriers start folding. It's going to happen starting really soon. And the trucking industry is too vital to our country to let that happen. So this is my call out to the general public, to politicians. We need to get them involved so that they can reverse what's going on right now, so that it doesn't destroy our country or destroy trucking as a whole. Now, for those people that are saying, well, none of that matters because they're going to self-driving trucks anyway. Okay, let's take this seriously. Self-driving trucks, think about it. On a perfect road, in perfect conditions, they're driving in Arizona for about 200 or 300 miles. And that's on perfect roads with perfect weather conditions. Guess what? I drive a truck for a living. It's very rare we get perfect anything. Okay? Most of the roads across the United States are not perfect. Most weather conditions, especially this time of year, horrible. Those self-driving trucks don't know how to handle snow. They don't know how to handle torrential downpours or dust storms or ice on the road. They don't know. They're just going to drive according to what they were programmed to drive. and it's going to cause, people are going to die. I mean, seriously, people are going to die with those self-driving trucks. How many people have to die before we realize that that's a horrible idea? So, be right back. Okay, so that ends my rant on the shortage of drivers. But honestly, you guys should look into it, because it's kind of crazy that everybody thinks we have a shortage of drivers when there's tons of drivers out there that are willing to work. People just aren't paying them enough. I mean, that's the problem. When the government got involved and over-regulated our industry, but didn't make sure that we were going to be compensated for all of our sacrifice in time and stress level and danger level, then now it's the government's fault. Now it's, everybody's fault. I think even I'm at blame for working in this industry that treats people like they do. So, I'm signing off for the night. Hey, don't forget, make sure you go over there and subscribe, go over there and like, go all the way to the bottom, and leave me some comments. You all have a good day now, you hear?